Hey folks, with increasing frequency these days, I'm seeing people express the sentiment that borders are a fake human concept and that our society is now too progressive to continue maintaining it. There are several problems with this idea, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit from my perspective in this video. If you claim that borders are simply a human concept, you ignore the fact that there are several members of the animal kingdom which are known to instinctively maintain strict territorial boundaries. And when those boundaries are infringed upon, they tend to be very aggressive confrontations, whether it's troops of monkeys, lion prides, or whatever. So, no, borders are not strictly a human concept. Secondly, the problem with people who advocate for a borderless society is that they generally mean that national borders should be abolished. I'm sure that if you follow the news at all, you will at least once have heard someone say something like, no human being should be illegal. This is a perfectly sweet sentiment in theory, but let's think about that. If you say you want to eliminate national borders because, and this is one aspect that I agree with, no human being deserves to die simply because of where they happened to have been born. But if you say you want to eliminate borders, how far do you want that notion to extend? So you want to get rid of national borders. Okay. Does that also mean that if someone shows up unannounced at your house or on your property and decides that they want to live there, does that mean they have the right to do so? That might sound silly, but in practice, what is the difference between a national border and the border of your property? Let's face it, everyone, every human, or maybe not every human because there are some genuinely crazy people in the world, but most of us like the idea of having our own space where we can live as we want in privacy and not have our lives intruded upon. To me, the idea of a truly borderless society sounds completely absurd because if you don't have borders, as in limits on where people can and can't go, you don't have a functional society. Because if everyone can go everywhere simply because they feel like it, that's eventually going to lead to chaos. Because you can't keep anything in order that way. Also, this sentiment, I understand that most people who express it uh, do so out of a desire to lessen the suffering of their fellow human beings. But it is also a very powerful tool for those who wish to manipulate large groups of people to do what they want. If borders are weak, then you can move people around like pieces on a chessboard, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. The other issue with this that really is the main crux of the problem is that if you advocate for a one world society of this nature, you're ignoring the fact that people are not all the same. Cultural differences are real and lead to conflict. I'm not blind to this because I'm a South African, and at various points throughout recent history, we've had politicians here advocate for a one continent African passport, which would allow any African citizen of any African nation to pass freely between borders. Again, that sounds great in theory until you realize that there are tribal conflicts both inside South Africa and outside of it. And that just because a lot of people in Africa happen to have black skin does not by any means indicate that they think the same or that they share the same values. South Africa has very disturbing bouts of xenophobic violence on occasion because, as I'm sure anyone with any common sense knows, Africa is a very poor continent, generally speaking. So many citizens of neighboring African countries come here, often illegally, in the hope of making a living for themselves and their families. The only problem is somebody from Zimbabwe is not the same as a native Zulu, and the native Zulu will often tell them so and show them by means of physical force. So, again, this idea that you can just abolish all borders and have no detrimental side effects is absurd. That's all I've got to say about that. So, have a great day, look after yourselves, and for now, farewell.